I never thought I'd hear my own daughter speak to me the way she did that afternoon. Her voice wasn't raised. There were no tears. Just a steady, rehearsed calm that made the words cut deeper than anger ever could. "Apologize," she said, looking straight at me, "or I'm done with you." I remember blinking, certain I'd misheard her. The room felt smaller suddenly, like the walls had moved in without asking permission. I waited for her to explain, to soften it, to say she didn't mean it the way it sounded. She didn't. Apologize for what? I asked. She crossed her arms. "You know exactly what you did." That was the first moment something inside me went quiet, because I didn't know, and the way she said it told me she wasn't interested in explaining. Before I go any further, pause for a second and tell me where you're watching from. Because if you've ever been asked to take the blame just to keep the peace, you're going to understand what came next. She accused me of embarrassing her, of making her look bad in front of people, of talking about things that should have stayed private. The words came fast, overlapping, never quite landing on a single clear accusation. Every time I tried to pin it down, it slipped away. "You said things you shouldn't have," she insisted. "I answered questions," I said, "honestly." She shook her head like that settled it. Honesty isn't always necessary. That sentence sat between us, heavy and dangerous. I felt the urge to apologize rising in my chest. Not because I was guilty, but because I could already see where this was going. Silence. Distance. Losing her. She leaned forward then, lowering her voice. "If you care about this family at all, you'll just say you're sorry. Otherwise, don't expect me to be around anymore." I opened my mouth to respond, and stopped myself, because something about the way she said otherwise told me this wasn't about reconciliation. It was about submission. I asked her again, slowly this time, "Tell me exactly what I said that wasn't true." Her jaw tightened. "That's not the point." And that's when I realized the apology she wanted wasn't meant to heal anything. It was meant to rewrite reality. I could feel the weight of the choice settling in. Apologize and keep my daughter, or stand by the truth and risk losing her entirely. My hands were shaking, though I tried to hide it. I told her I needed time to think. She stood up immediately. "You don't have time," she said. "This ends the day." She walked toward the door, then stopped with her hand on the handle. "If you don't call me tonight with an apology," she added without turning around, "consider yourself cut off." The door closed behind her with a soft click. No slam, no drama, just finality. I stood there long after she left, staring at the empty space she'd occupied, wondering how refusing to lie had somehow made me the villain, and wondering what would happen if, for the first time in my life, I didn't give in, because what I decided next would change far more than our relationship. It would decide who I was willing to be. That night, I didn't call her, not because I was brave, not because I was certain, but because every time I reached the phone, one question stopped me cold. What exactly am I apologizing for? I replayed every conversation in my head, every word I'd spoken, every moment she could possibly be referring to. I wasn't perfect. I never claimed to be, but I hadn't lied. I hadn't insulted her. I hadn't gone out of my way to humiliate her. I had simply answered questions when people asked why things felt strained between us. Apparently, that was unforgivable. I slept maybe 2 hours. When morning came, it felt like I hadn't rested at all. My phone sat on the table, face up, daring me to make a decision I wasn't ready for yet. I poured coffee I didn't drink and stared out the window, watching the street wake up, wondering how something so ordinary could feel so heavy. By mid-morning, the messages started. "Have you thought about it? This doesn't have to be complicated. I'm giving you a chance to fix this." Each one landed harder than the last. None of them explained what I'd supposedly done. None of them asked how I felt. They were instructions, not conversations. That's when I realized something that made my stomach drop. She wasn't asking me to apologize to her. She wanted me to apologize to the version of her she'd already sold to other people. A version where she was a victim, where I was careless, embarrassing, insensitive. A version where the truth had been quietly edited to make her look justified. And my apology would be the final proof. Around noon, I finally replied. "I'm willing to talk," I wrote, "but I need you to be specific. The reply came almost instantly. "You're still doing it," she wrote, deflecting. I asked again, calmly, clearly, "What statement did I make that was untrue?" There was a pause this time. A long one. Long enough for hope to creep in. Hope that maybe she'd reconsider. Maybe she'd explain. Maybe I'd misunderstood everything. Instead, she called, "You're really going to do this?" She snapped the moment I answered. "After everything I've been through?" Her voice was sharper now, the calm cracking around the edges. "I'm asking for clarity," I said. "That's all." "You don't need clarity," she shot back. "You need empathy." "For what?" I asked. "For how it made me feel," she said. "People don't look at me the same anymore." That sentence finally connected the dots. "What did I say that changed how they look at you?" I asked. "You told them things that weren't their business," she replied. "Were they true?" I asked. Silence. Not the thoughtful kind. The defensive kind. "That doesn't matter," she said finally. "You don't get to decide how your words affect me." There it was. The shift. The unspoken rule she expected me to accept. Truth was optional. Feelings were law. I felt something settle in my chest then, not anger, not relief, but clarity. If I apologize now, I wouldn't be smoothing things over. I'd be agreeing that facts don't matter if someone feels uncomfortable enough. And once you agree to that, you never get your footing back. I told her I needed more time. She laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. "You're choosing this," she said. "You know that, right?" "Choosing what?" I asked. "This distance. This outcome." The threat was back, sharpened and polished. "If you don't apologize by tonight," she said, "I'm done. No calls. No visits. No updates. You'll find out about my life the same way everyone else does. If at all." I hung up without responding, not out of spite, because there was nothing left to say in that moment. Instead, I did something I'd never done before. I wrote everything down. Every message. Every call. Every shifting explanation. I wrote what I remembered saying weeks earlier, word for word as best I could. I wrote who was there, what was asked, what I answered, not because I planned to confront her with it, but because I needed to see it laid out plainly. And when I did, something unsettling became obvious. There was no single offense. There was no lie. There was only discomfort, and her belief that discomfort entitled her to an apology. That afternoon, I reached out to someone who had been present during one of those earlier conversations. Someone neutral. Someone with no reason to protect me. I asked them one simple question. "Did I say anything untrue?" They didn't hesitate. "No," they said. "You were careful. If anything, you held back." I thanked them and hung up, my hands suddenly steady. That was the moment I stopped debating whether to apologize and started thinking about what refusing would teach her. Because if I gave in now, I wouldn't just be lying for peace. I'd be teaching her that ultimatums work, that rewriting reality is easier than facing it, that silence and fear are acceptable tools in relationships. And that was a lesson I wasn't willing to pass on. As the sun dipped lower outside my window, my phone buzzed again. A final message from her. "This is your last chance." I stared at the screen, heart pounding, knowing that whatever I did next would lock the door one way or another. And I still hadn't told her the one thing she wasn't expecting to hear at all. I didn't answer her message right away, not because I was trying to punish her, but because I want to be certain of one thing before I spoke again. I want to know that whatever I said next wouldn't come from fear. The house was quiet in a way that felt unfamiliar. Too quiet. I walked from room to room, noticing details I usually ignored. The old photo frame on the shelf, the faint mark on the wall where she'd once measured her height as a child. Each memory tried to pull me back toward the easiest path, toward apologizing just to keep the connection alive. That's when I realized something uncomfortable. She was counting on that. She was counting on nostalgia to do the work her argument couldn't. I sat down at the table again and read through the notes I'd made. Dates, words, her messages copied exactly as she'd written them. The pattern was impossible to ignore now. Every time I asked for specifics, she shifted the ground. Every time I asked for truth, she redirected to feelings. Every time I tried to understand, She accused me of refusing to care. It wasn't confusion. It was strategy. I picked up my phone and typed the reply I've been avoiding all day. I won't apologize for something I didn't do, but I'm willing to talk openly, calmly, and honestly. I stared at the screen for a long moment before hitting send. I knew that sentence alone would escalate things. It wasn't defiant. It wasn't cruel. But it drew a line she couldn't step over without exposing herself. Her response came fast. So you're choosing this. That sentence again. As if truth were a button I could turn off if I loved her enough. I called her this time. Not to argue, but to end the guessing. What do you want me to say? I asked when she answered. I want you to admit you were wrong, she said. Wrong about what? I asked. That you shouldn't have said anything, she replied. So you want me to apologize for answering questions honestly? I asked. For embarrassing me, she snapped. For making people think I'm a bad daughter. I took a breath. Slow. Measured. Did I lie? I asked. There was again. That pause. The one she always needed when facts entered the conversation. You didn't have to tell the truth like that, she finally said. That sentence told me everything. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't counterattack. I simply said, I won't apologize for telling the truth. Her tone shifted instantly, from frustration to fury. You care more about being right than about me, she said. No, I replied quietly. I care about being honest. There's a difference. She accused me of choosing pride over family, of being stubborn, of always needing to win. Each accusation came faster than the last, as if speed might make them stick. And then she said something she couldn't take back. If you don't apologize, she said, I'll make sure everyone knows how you really are. I didn't respond right away, because in that moment, something clicked into place. This wasn't about what had already happened. This was about what she planned to do next. I told her I needed one more conversation, face to face, neutral ground, no accusations, no ultimatums, just clarity. She laughed. Why? So you can explain yourself again? No, I said, so you can explain the accusation. She agreed, but not without a warning. If you think this is going to change anything, you're wrong. We met 2 days later at a quiet cafe halfway between our homes. I arrived early and chose a table where we wouldn't be overheard, but couldn't be ignored either. She arrived late, sunglasses still on, posture rigid. She didn't sit down before speaking. Are you ready to apologize? She asked. I gestured to the chair. Sit. Let's talk. She sat, arms crossed again, that familiar posture defense. I didn't rush. I let the silence stretch just long enough to make her uncomfortable. I want to understand, I said. Tell me exactly what I said that was false. Her answer was immediate this time, but not factual. You made me look selfish, she said. How? I asked. By talking about boundaries, she replied. By telling people you felt taken for granted. Was that untrue? I asked. She opened her mouth and stopped. I leaned forward slightly. I'm willing to apologize for anything I did wrong, but I won't apologize for how facts made you feel. Her eyes narrowed. You're twisting this. No, I said. I'm slowing it down. I told her something then that she wasn't expecting. I wrote everything down. I said, every message, every accusation, every version of the story you've given me. Her confidence faltered. Just for a second, I also spoke to people who were there. I continued, people who heard what I said. She scoffed. So now you're gathering allies? I'm gathering truth, I said. There's a difference. She stood up abruptly, chair scraping loudly against the floor. You're unbelievable. I stayed seated. Sit down, I said calmly. We're not done. That sentence stopped her. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten. I simply spoke with a certainty she hadn't heard from me before. You gave me an ultimatum, I continued. Apologize or be cut off. That tells me this apology isn't about repair. It's about control. Her face flushed. You don't get to psychoanalyze me. I'm not, I replied. I'm setting a boundary. She stared at me, jaw clenched, waiting for me to soften, to backtrack, to do what I always did. Instead, I delivered the lesson. I will not apologize for something I didn't do, I said. And I won't accept being punished for refusing to lie. If you choose to cut me off because of that, that's your choice. But I won't participate in rewriting reality to make you comfortable. Her voice dropped, cold and sharp. Then we're done. I nodded slowly. If that's what you decide. She left without another word. The silence that followed felt different than before. Heavier, but cleaner. Like a storm that finally breaks instead of hovering endlessly overhead. That night, I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady. And that steadiness carried me through the days that followed. Through the silence she enforced. Through the rumors she couldn't quite control. Through the quiet realization that ultimatums only work when the other person's afraid to lose. What she didn't know yet was that refusing to apologize had already started to unravel the story she'd built. And she was about to feel the consequences of demanding a confession she couldn't prove. The silence after she walked out of that cafe stretched longer than I expected. Days passed without a word. No calls. No messages. No accidental check-ins disguised as concern. Just absence. And I'd be lying if I said it didn't hurt. It did. Every morning, I'd reach for my phone out of habit, then stop myself. I knew what she wanted. She wanted time to work on me, to let the loneliness do what her arguments couldn't. She was betting that quiet would break me. For a while, it almost worked. I caught myself rehearsing apologies I didn't believe in. I imagined saying them softly, carefully, just enough to make the tension dissolve. I imagined her relief, the return to normal, the illusion of peace. But every time I went down that road, one thought pulled me back. If I apologize now, I'll be apologizing forever. Because this wouldn't be the last time she demanded it. Once you teach someone that ultimatums work, they start using them like punctuation. A week into the silence, I started hearing things indirectly. Small shifts, subtle ones. A mutual acquaintance asked if everything was okay between us. A relative mentioned my daughter seemed on edge. No accusations, just curiosity. The kind that forms when a story starts to wobble. She had expected the absence to look one-sided. She hadn't expected people to notice the gap. Then, late one evening, my phone rang. Her name lit up the screen. For a moment, I didn't answer. Not out of spite. I just needed to be sure my voice wouldn't give away the ground I'd finally found. When I picked up, she didn't greet me. "Why didn't you just apologize?" she asked. Her voice wasn't angry. It was strained, like someone holding something together by sheer will. "Because it wouldn't have been true," I said. "You could have said it and moved on," she replied. "You didn't have to mean it." That sentence told me more than she realized. I don't say things I don't mean, I said quietly, especially not about my own character. She exhaled sharply. "You don't understand what this has done to me." I waited, letting silence do what arguments couldn't. "People are asking questions," she continued. "They want to know why we're not speaking, why things are complicated." "And what are you telling them?" I asked. Another pause. "That you're being difficult," she said. "That you won't let it go." I nodded to myself. "And is that working?" She didn't answer. That was the first crack. She hadn't expected resistance to create pressure on her side. She'd assumed the burden of explanation would fall entirely on me. But without my apology, she had nothing solid to point to. No confession. No admission. No proof that I was wrong. Only her feelings. And feelings don't hold up well under repetition. A few days later, she called again. This time, the tone was different. Less accusation. More negotiation. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Really talk?" "We've been talking," I said. "No," she replied. "I mean without lines drawn." I agreed to meet her again. Not because I wanted resolution at any cost, but because I sensed something shifting. When control starts to slip, people often try a softer grip. We met at her place this time. Familiar ground. Childhood photos on the walls. The smell of something cooking that reminded me of years I thought were behind us. Nostalgia tried to do its work again. She poured coffee, hands shaking just enough for me to notice. "I didn't think you'd actually let this go on," she said finally. "I didn't think you'd actually cut me off," I replied. She looked down. I didn't think you'd call my bluff. There it was. Not an apology, but honesty. I wasn't bluffing. I said I was refusing. She frowned. That's the same thing. No, I said gently. A bluff is about fear. Refusal is about boundaries. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she started explaining herself. Not accusing this time. Explaining. She talked about pressure, about how she felt judged, about how she felt like she had to defend herself all the time. I listened, really listened, not because I owed her an apology, but because understanding isn't the same as surrender. When she finished, she looked at me expectantly. So, she asked, don't you see why you should have just apologized? I leaned back and chose my words carefully. I see why you wanted one, I said, but I also see why giving it would have been wrong. Her jaw tightened again. Old habits resurfacing. You're still not admitting anything. I'm admitting my part, I said. I spoke honestly. I didn't insult you. I didn't lie. If honesty embarrassed you, that's something we need to talk about, not erase. She stood up and paced the room. You're making this so complicated. No, I replied. I'm making it accurate. She stopped pacing. So you're really okay with losing me over this? The question hung in the air, heavy and raw. I'm not okay with losing you, I said, but I'm not willing to lose myself to keep you. Her eyes filled, not with anger this time, but something closer confusion. I thought you'd cave, she admitted quietly. Everyone else does. That was it. The confession she didn't realize she was making. I stood up slowly, not looming, not confrontational, just present. This is a lesson, I said. You don't get to demand apologies for discomfort. You don't get to threaten people into validating a version of events that isn't true. And if you do, you might get silence instead. She swallowed hard. I never meant to hurt you, she said. I know, I replied, but intent doesn't erase impact. We stood there for a long moment, neither of us speaking. Something had changed, not resolved, but shifted. The power dynamic she relied on no longer existed. She couldn't threaten me anymore, and she knew it. I need time, she said finally. So do I answered. I left without another word. The days that followed were different. Not warm, not close, but honest. The silence wasn't weaponized anymore. It was reflective. People stopped asking me questions. They started asking her. She didn't cut me off again. She couldn't, not without confronting what that would say about her. And slowly, painfully, she began to understand the cost of the ultimatum she'd issued so easily. But the final lesson, the one that would settle everything, hadn't arrived yet. It would come when she realized something far more unsettling than resistance. That she no longer had the authority to decide who was right. And that realization was coming sooner than she thought. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was worried she'd cut me off, but because I knew exactly what I was about to do next. People think standing your ground is loud. It isn't. Real strength is quiet, calculated, patient. And once you understand that, you stop reacting to ultimatums and start letting consequences do the talking for you. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise, made coffee, and opened the folder I'd been building for months. Not out of spite, out of habit. Old instincts from a life where details mattered and emotions didn't get to rewrite facts. Inside were emails, texts, voicemails, dates, screenshots. Every single moment she'd accused me of embarrassing her. Every time she'd asked me to just apologize so things would be easier. Every time she'd told me I was standing in the way of her peace. And the one message that mattered most, you need to apologize. If you don't bother calling me again. I stared at that line longer than I expected to. Before I go any further, pause for a second and tell me this. What would you do if your own child tried to rewrite reality and demand your submission? Comment it. I really want to know, because here's what I didn't do.